Hi there and welcome to our Vegas Nation Stadium show where we provide inside analysis and all up-to-date information on what's happening with the NFL Stadium set to open here in 2020. I'm Ed Graney, sports columnist of the Review Journal. I'm pleased to be joined today by Rick Velotta, our man on all things stadium, and our special guest today, Steve Hill, chairman of the Stadium Authority Board of Directors, the 9-member panel, also former chairman of the Southern Infrastructure Tourism Committee. Did I get that right? Southern Nevada Tourism Infrastructure Committee.
There you go.
I always said Syntec. I always wrote Syntec. I never spelled it out. But welcome to both of you guys.
Thank you.
Steve, let me start with you. I've always wondered this and asking you this in terms of, I've never been able to ask you, I've just seen you at these meetings running things behind the table. Have you given yourself a moment to kind of sit back and realize, whether it be with Syntec or the Stadium Authority, as you get closer to the end of this process, what you groups have been able to do in terms of the historic value of what the stadium is going to mean for Las Vegas? Or you've just been so busy with your new position, we'll talk about that in a little bit, and all of these authorities that you haven't really been able to think about 10, 20, 30 years down the road what this stadium is going to mean?
Well, there have been a couple of opportunities to pause and reflect on that. And I think you're right. I think the stadium is going to make maybe a bigger impact in Las Vegas than it even would in some other cities, because our tourism and hospitality industry and network is so vast and they play off each other so well.
Rick, and he brings us to the next question. Yesterday you and I were at the meeting. As I also wrote, props to the people who had the under on the 2 hours. I mean, you guys did great there. I went in expecting a much longer meeting, and I think everyone's really wondering, how much is this going to cost? I know there's not a number yet.
We were assured pretty much that probably within 10 days we'll start to hear some details about that. And if it's north of $2 billion, well, they have to figure out how to finance that.
Right.
But the important thing is that the county needs to know what that number is, so they can figure out exactly how they bond it.
Steve, you said this to me yesterday again also. I think when people remember the $750 room tax, a major part of this is to heighten tourism. But this stadium is so much more of that. Are you even more convinced now, or is there still some trepidation inside you that you will be able, this stadium will be able to fill the event number that it needs to be financially stable and to what you envision this to be, of that $750 million going towards that and bringing more tourism here?
Yeah, there were really a couple of reasons why the governor, the legislature, the committee, and now the board feel that investing the $750 million is a really good investment. One is that it allows UNLV a place to have a great place to play football.
Right.
What that does then, besides providing UNLV a place to play, it brings more tourists to town. There's 12 or so of those activities already at Sam Boyd. So Sam Boyd will close. We anticipate that virtually all, if not all, of those events will migrate over to the stadium. That puts us up near 30 events.
Rick, I'd say the most interesting topic yesterday, I don't think anyone will disagree in here, is anytime Mark Bedane speaks, kind of people perk up because it's the Raiders and everyone wants, the Raiders are coming. But he spoke on the one aspect yesterday where everyone's so worried about, and that's parking. And we've talked a lot about parking, but it's an important matter. Update the people on what he said about parking in the spaces. Are you as confident as I think a lot of people were in the room that obviously they don't have all the land yet for the 27,000, but at least they've identified a number of spaces that would cover the number they need by September?
Basically what Mr. Bedane said during the meeting was that we have identified 27,000 parking spaces in various locations within 1.25 miles of the stadium. Presumably people could walk 1.25 miles to get to the stadium for events. Now, where those lots are, we don't really know at this point. But they also need to consider the transportation from maybe further outlying areas, because in addition to these 27,000 potential parking spaces within 1.25 miles, he said within 3 miles there's like 100,000 spaces.
Right.
So, and they've made a pretty solid commitment from day one that parking is important to them, that tailgating is very important to them. And so I'm very confident that the Raiders will come through and provide some kind of a plan that will be satisfactory to the county when they need to have it, which presumably is by September.
Rick, sitting next to the gentleman who's in charge of this authority board, you can now tell us what now are any potential holdups. I know other people have to, the NFL levels, other county levels have to sign off, I assume, on what was done Thursday, but people want to know probably now what next. What's next? Any potential holdups, or do you think this goes through now and they just move on into the construction?
Well, the way it's been described is that a lot of the documents that were approved yesterday will go for review by a committee of the NFL. I believe it's a finance committee or perhaps a stadium committee, I don't know which, but they will take a look at that probably within the next couple of weeks. I believe there's another meeting of the authority that's due between now and the time that the NFL owners meet. That occurs, the owners meet in Orlando at the very end of March, and that's at that point the NFL is expected to sign off on all these documents and agreements as well. Then the authority board will then gather again to look at those tweaks, perhaps implement them, and then send the documents to Clark County, which has a meeting scheduled. The Clark County Commission has a meeting scheduled April 3rd. That's a Tuesday morning, at which point they will be able to review and adopt a resolution on the bond sales.
Steve, in your new position now with the LVCVA, how will your job and you specifically, or will you sort of lead or become partners with the Raiders in terms of bringing major sporting events, whether it be Man U in a soccer match, whether it be Alabama, Notre Dame in college football? You have to get things into that stadium. Will Las Vegas Events kind of take charge in this, or is it the company that works with the Raiders in that stadium? Where does your position now with LVCVA put you in terms of bringing major sporting events to this town?
Well, I think it's helpful, and I think the synergy between the LVCVA and the stadium is obvious, and
Right.
I am appointed by the governor as chair of the Stadium Authority. That appointment lasts through 2019. It'll be up to the next governor whether they want me to stay in that role. But we will work together to bring events to
Okay.
Las Vegas. And frankly, we're going to have to step that game up because we now have a facility that can seat 65,000 people. We have a broader range of possibilities, and they're a lot larger.
It's funny because when I was at the Super Bowl, we did stories saying Super Bowl weekend is the biggest weekend in the world for the city hosting. And yet Vegas already is Super Bowl every year because of how many people come here. So what would be the difference? Why would it be important in your mind, given what we already have on the Super Bowl, to bring it here? Is it more perception's sake to show off that stadium and to show Vegas is kind of a big time place now for professional sports?
Yeah, and I think I'd describe it a little more expansively. We are and want to grow Las Vegas's reputation as not only the entertainment capital of the world, but as the sports capital of the world as well. You can grow industry off of that. We want to cement that brand and that reality. So having the most important events in the world in Las Vegas helps with that pretty significantly.
We might not be able to ask you this again. This will be our final question. It's an important one. There is a rumor that Rick Velotta has been told he might be able to blow up something at that stadium. We're hoping it's where the beer room is stored. Do you have any kind of power or influence over where this man can blow up at the stadium?
Anywhere that is not near the beer room. No triggers while with a mug in his hand.
There you go. Well, thank you both for joining us. It was awesome. Thank you, Steve. I mean,
Happy to be
you've
here.
done an incredible job, and we saw you at Syntac that first meeting, and I remember Beckham, and I mean, Carolyn didn't have the soccer scarf on, but she was there, and then to go to Carson City and see that through, and now the Authority, you must sit back and think it's been a long road, but obviously a successful one.
Well, I've had an awful lot of help, but we're excited about where we are, and we're excited about the stadium and the Raiders coming to town.
Thanks to both you guys. Well, there you have it. Keep your eye out in the next few weeks for important stadium matters, such as the final price tag that Rick talked about and other updates. We hope you enjoyed the show. And remember, for all your Stadium and Raiders news, go to ReviewJournal.com daily and check back here at Vegas Nation, where we will continue to bring your stadium shows as the project is built before our very own eyes. For Review Journal reporter Rick Velotta, Chairman Steve Hill, I'm Ed Graney. Thanks all for watching.